Okay, so we are going to learn how to find slope from a graph. So before we look at these actual examples, we need to know the different types of slope. We have a cool little face guy that we can draw to help us remember. It's just a tool to help you remember. So up at the top of your page, right up here, I want you to draw just a circle for our face. That's not a very good circle, but you get the gist. So there's 4 types of slope, and you can tell just by looking at these lines. Some lines go up, some go down, and something that we haven't seen a whole lot of yet is horizontal lines and vertical lines. So we'll start with a line that goes up, and it's going to be one eyebrow of our face. A line that is going up is going to be a positive slope. Now a line that is going to go down, that's going to be a negative slope. So we got some guy with some funky eyes. Now the other 2 types of slope that we have is an undefined slope, which is probably the most unseen one that you have reached at this point. And it is going to be our nose of our little face. And we're going to put a little U under it to represent undefined. And then we're going to have the mouth, which is 0 slope. So we have a funky looking dude. He looks sad, I think, but we have positive, negative, undefined, and 0. So 0 is that horizontal line, undefined is that vertical line. So again, that's just a tool to help you remember the different types of slope that we have. All right, so let's look at our first example. And if you have some highlighters, I'm going to continue to use those just like we used a lot for domain and range. Any kind of vertical movement, that's like our change in the Y value, I'm going to use pink for that. And any kind of horizontal movement, that's like our X values, our domain, I'm going to use yellow for that. So to start with, let's talk about the word slope. So we have different ways that we can find slope, and when we're talking about it on a graph, I'm sure you've heard of rise over run, rise over run. Think of you're sitting in a seat. Before you can run, you have to rise up first before you can take off running. We also call it vertical change over horizontal change. And there's one more here that I would like you to add, just because we will see this as well. It is a delta Y, which that just stands for the change in Y over delta X, over the change in X. So you can make a little note there if you want to, that just is the change in Y over the change in X. All right, so now let's go ahead and highlight, because again, like I said, we're going to do some horizontal changes in yellow, and we're going to do our vertical changes in pink. So our rise is going to be pink, our running is going to be yellow. Now, something very important to remember when you are finding slope, when you read a graph, you want to read it just like you read a book, which is from left to right. So let's put a star up over here and put from left to right. So we always want to look from left to right. All right, so let's look at the first question here. It says to get from A to B, you move blank units up. So let's look at where A is, and we're going to go up first, which is a vertical change. So from A to B, I want to know how many units up do I need to move. So I'm going to start right here at A, and I'm going to go up 2 units so that now I'm on the same level as B. So we're going to move 2 units up. Now we need our horizontal change. So now we're going to move to the right. So I'm moving to the right 1, 2, 3 units. I can count them here to help you. 1, 2, 3 units to the right. Okay, so now looking at our slope, we want the rise over the run, right? So our pink number, we moved up 2 units, right? I'm going to go ahead and highlight that here. We moved 2 units up and 3 units to the right. So when we write our slope, we want the rise first, our vertical change, which was up 2, over our horizontal change, which was 3. So our slope is 2 over 3. Now taking that same line, it says now let's move from B to C. So from B to C, I'm going to do my vertical change first. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So I'm going to move 4 units up. Oops. 4 units up. And then to the right, we are going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going 6 units to the right. Now, before I write my slope over here in my final answer, or actually I'm going to go ahead and write it. So we moved 4 units up and 6 units to the right. Now, when you have a fraction, one thing that we always need to make sure is that it is simplified. So in your calculator, you can hit alpha y equals, set up this fraction, type in 4 over 6, and you will see that it simplifies to 2 over 3. So now, what relationship do you see between the two slopes? So we have the first slope here and our second slope, and they ended up being the same. Now, the reason they're the same is because we're using the same line. So just because we're looking at 2 points further away the second time, they're still going up at the same rate, which we know from earlier that slope is the same thing as rate of change. It's how quickly it's moving up. Okay, so let's look at example number 2 here. The first one here we're going to get from L to M. So from L to M, let's do our vertical change first. We always go from left to right. So left to right, I'm starting at L, going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. So I'm moving 6 units up. And then our horizontal movements, we are moving 2 units over to get to M. So 2 units to the right. Okay, so our slope is 6 over 2. Now again, we need to see if this simplifies. So in your calculator, we're going to set up that fraction, alpha y equals, and we're typing in 6 over 2, and we get 3, which we can always write that as a fraction. With slope, fractions are good because that tells us our rise over run. So I'm going to go ahead and write it as 3 over 1 just to make it a little more friendly later on. All right, so now let's look, same line. So I think we can predict what's going to happen between our slopes because it's the same line. But we are going to get from J to K. So vertical movement first. Here's J. I'm going up 3. And I'm moving to the right 1 unit. So our slope, 3 over 1, which again, that's the same thing as 3, right? We could say here that's the same thing as 3. This also equals 3. We just wrote it as a fraction. So again, these slopes are the same. All right, very good. Now, this last one is a little bit different because the first two, those types of slope were positive, right? They were both going up from left to right. Now the third one, this is a negative slope. So our slope, when we write it, should be a negative number. So let's look from R to S. Vertical movements first. Now to get from R to S, I'm not going to go up anymore. So sometimes we say rise all the time, right? But it's really, you can rise up or you can fall down. So if we're going from left to right, we're going to fall down how many units? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, too far. I want to go to S. 1, 2, 3, 4 units down. Now, because we're going 4 units down, that down tells us a negative number because down is in a negative direction. So I'm going to put this as a negative 4. And we have now we're going over to S, which is 2 units to the right. Now, since we're always going to the right, that bottom number will always be positive. All right, so we've got our slope of negative 4, since we went down, over 2. Now, negative 4 over 2, if you simplify that in your fraction, or in your simplify that fraction in your calculator, you get negative 2, which is the same thing as negative 2 over 1, right? We know that those are the same, just nice to keep it as a fraction for later on. All right, so finally, let's do from Q to T. So from Q to T, vertical movements first. I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 down. That's a lot down. And since it's down again, that is going to be a -8. So we're moving 8 units down, which is a -8, and then we're going to move how many units to the right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're moving 4 units to the right. All right, so let's write our slope. We've got -8, that's our vertical movement, over 4. Type that in your calculator, you will get -2, which as a fraction is -2/1. And again, they are the same. When you're dealing with the same line, it doesn't matter what 2 points you choose, as long as they are good points, your slope is going to be the exact same because you're talking about a rate of change, and that's how quickly or slowly the line is going up or down. And that is it for finding slope from a graph.